Levi Whitmore stepped out of the sleek black town car, adjusting the cuff of his tailored navy suit. The cold Chicago air bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. His mind was already at the office, already in the meeting, already sealing the deal that would secure Whitmore Tech's dominance in the industry. The driver closed the door behind him, and Levi strode through the entrance of Massachusetts General Hospital, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. After 2 weeks of forced rest following heart surgery, he was done with the waiting. His company needed him. The board needed him. His entire empire balanced on what happened in today's meeting. A nurse glanced up as he walked toward the reception desk, then quickly looked away. He was used to that reaction. He was Levi Whitmore, powerful, untouchable. People either respected him, envied him, or feared him. But as he reached for the discharge of paperwork, a voice stopped him, soft but firm, unshaken. "Mr. Whitmore, you can't go to that meeting." Levi turned. A young nurse stood before him, her brown eyes locked onto his with an intensity that sent a ripple of unease through his chest. She wasn't intimidated by him. That was rare. He lifted a brow. "Excuse me. I know you don't know me," she said, gripping the clipboard in her hands as if steadying herself. "But please listen to me. Don't go." His first instinct was to dismiss her. He didn't have time for nonsense, but something about the way she said it, low, urgent, almost desperate, made him hesitate. He studied her, long brown hair pulled into a messy ponytail, a crease between her brows, concern, not fear. "Who are you?" His tone came out sharper than he intended. She swallowed. "My name is Betsy Carter, and you don't have to believe me. But if you walk into that boardroom today, everything you think you know about your life, it's going to change." Levi stared at her. A flicker of irritation crept in. This was ridiculous. He was wasting time. "Miss Carter," he said, voice measured, "I don't have time for cryptic warnings. If you know something, say it, otherwise I have a company to run." Betsy's grip on the clipboard tightened, but she didn't back down. She exhaled sharply, then shook her head. "I can't explain right now. But please, just trust me. Don't go." A dry laugh left his lips. "Trust you? A stranger?" She hesitated, then met his gaze. Yes. Levi had spent his entire career building an empire, navigating billion-dollar deals, and detecting lies from competitors, investors, and supposed allies. And yet, looking at her now, something about her was genuine. Still, he wasn't a man who changed plans because of vague warnings from a woman he'd never met. He had real problems to handle. "I appreciate your concern, Miss Carter, but I don't make decisions based on gut feelings." He grabbed the pen and signed the discharge papers. "Now, if you'll excuse me." She stepped forward, blocking his path. "Mr. Whitmore, please." For the first time, he saw it, something deeper behind her expression. Not just worry, but personal investment. Like whatever she was trying to stop from happening would affect her too. But he didn't have time to dissect it. He sidestepped her and walked toward the exit, his driver already pulling up to the curb. As he slid into the back seat, he glanced through the glass doors. Betsy Carter was still standing there, watching him leave, her lips pressed into a tight line, and for reasons he couldn't explain, the image of her stayed in his mind long after the hospital faded into the distance. 3 hours later, Levi Whitmore sat at the head of the massive conference table on the top floor of Whitmore Tech's downtown skyscraper. The meeting was in full swing, investors nodding as he laid out the final stages of Whitmore's next major product launch. Jack Monroe, his CFO and closest business ally, sat to his right, nodding along, adding in comments where necessary. It was all going according to plan. And yet, something felt off. He noticed it in the way a few board members exchanged glances, the almost imperceptible hesitation in Jack's voice when discussing the financials. a tension in the air, just thick enough for him to detect, but too faint to pinpoint. Levi had built this company from nothing. He had sacrificed relationships, time, and even his own health for it. He knew every inch of it, every working part, and right now, something was wrong. He adjusted his watch, clearing his throat. "I'd like a moment alone with the board before we continue." Jack's eyes flicked to him. "Levi, we have—" I said a moment. Jack hesitated, then nodded. The junior executives and assistants shuffled out. The door closed behind them, leaving only Levi, Jack, and the core members of the board. Silence stretched across the table. Levi tapped his fingers against the polished wood. "I'm going to ask once, and I expect honesty." His gaze swept the room, landing on each member before settling on Jack. "Is there something I need to know?" A beat passed. Then Jack let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Levi, come on. You've been out of the office for weeks. It's natural to feel a little out of sync." Levi didn't blink. "That's not what I asked." Jack sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Levi, I think you're letting the stress get to you." The discomfort in the room grew. Someone shifted in their seat. A throat cleared. Levi's jaw tensed. He had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals, detecting the smallest changes in tone, body language, and hesitation. Jack was lying. Something was happening. And it had started long before today. He leaned forward. "Let me make something clear. If there is anything going on behind my back, any plans, any discussions, I will find out. And when I do, there will be consequences." Jack's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, Levi. You know we're all on the same team." Levi held his gaze a moment longer, then leaned back, exhaling slowly. He needed to regroup, to find out what was happening before it was too late. As the meeting continued, his thoughts drifted back to the nurse at the hospital. Betsy Carter. Her words echoed in his mind. "If you go to that meeting, everything you think you know about your life, it's going to change." Levi had dismissed her, ignored the warning. But now, sitting in the middle of his own boardroom, with his most trusted advisors watching him with wary eyes, he realized something. She was right. Levi stepped into his private office, closing the heavy oak door behind him. The panoramic view of the Chicago skyline stretched before him, a city he had conquered, a kingdom he had built. But at this moment, none of it gave him the satisfaction it once did. Something was off. The boardroom meeting played in his mind like a glitching reel, repeating the unspoken words behind the forced smiles. Jack Monroe had lied. He was sure of it. The others, uneasy, hesitant, they knew something he didn't. And Betsy Carter. Her warning had been chillingly precise. Levi exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. He didn't believe in coincidences. A random nurse warning him about a meeting that had, indeed, felt wrong. That wasn't chance. That was something deeper. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Whitmore." His assistant's voice was cautious. "There's a woman here to see you. Says it's urgent." His pulse kicked up. "Who?" A pause. Then, "Betsy Carter." Levi straightened. His first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity, and something else he wasn't ready to name, pushed him toward the intercom. "Send her in." The door opened, and Betsy stepped in, her expression tense but resolute. She had changed from her nurse's uniform into casual jeans and a fitted coat, but she still carried the same intensity as before. "I didn't think you'd come," Levi said, watching her closely. Betsy shut the door behind her and crossed her arms. "I almost didn't, but you didn't listen to me this morning, and now I need you to." Levi gestured toward the seat across from his desk. She didn't take it. He leaned forward, hands clasped. "I don't respond well to cryptic warnings. If you have something to say, say it." Betsy's jaw tightened. "I work at the hospital you were admitted to. 2 weeks ago, I overheard something I shouldn't have." He raised a brow. "Go on." She took a deep breath, as if bracing herself. I was outside a patient's room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I recognized a voice. It was Jack Monroe. The air in the room shifted. Levi's spine stiffened. Betsy continued, her voice steady despite the tension. I heard him talking on the phone. I didn't catch everything, but I heard enough to know he's planning something against you. He mentioned selling something, or someone buying, and he said something about you being out of the way. Levi's fingers curled slightly against the desk. I didn't think much of it at first, Betsy admitted. But then I saw your name on the patient list, and I realized he wasn't talking about just any CEO. He was talking about you. Silence filled the space between them. Levi exhaled through his nose, his mind a whirlwind of calculations. If Jack had been planning something, he wouldn't have been careless enough to say it in public, which meant he thought you wouldn't matter, Levi said slowly. Betsy swallowed. Maybe. A strange sensation curled in his chest, an unfamiliar mix of frustration, intrigue, and something deeper he couldn't name. You should have told me this earlier, he said. Betsy huffed. I tried. Levi smirked despite himself. She had nerve and honesty, rare traits in his world. He studied her, noting the way her fingers tapped restlessly against her arm. She wasn't here for money or recognition. She genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. And for some reason, that unsettled him more than Jack's potential betrayal. You said you didn't catch everything, he said finally. What else do you remember? Betsy hesitated. He mentioned a name. Turner. Levi's jaw locked. Elliot Turner, Chief Executive Officer of Turner Innovations. His biggest competitor. That was it. That was the missing piece. If Jack was involved with Turner, then this wasn't just an internal dispute. It was a full-scale corporate takeover. Levi stood, pressing his palms against his desk. You have no idea what you've stepped into. Betsy's eyes flashed. You think I don't know that? I debated coming here at all, but I did because I thought you deserved the truth. Levi looked at her then. Really looked at her. She wasn't afraid of him. She should have been. Instead, she was standing her ground, challenging him. And damn it, he respected that. A slow exhale left his lips. And why does this matter to you so much? Betsy hesitated, her guard flickering for just a second. But then it was back, locked in place. It just does, she said quietly. For the first time in years, Levi felt something shift in his carefully constructed world. An outsider had walked into his life, and she had just changed everything. Levi studied Betsy in silence, his mind racing. She had just handed him a critical piece of information, one that confirmed what he had already suspected. Jack Monroe was making moves behind his back. Worse, he was in talks with Elliot Turner. That alone was enough to send a slow burn of anger through his veins, but the fact that a stranger, a nurse, had overheard it before he did, that unsettled him. Betsy shifted under his gaze, but didn't look away. She had that same fierce determination in her eyes that she had at the hospital, and for some reason, it struck him harder now. Levi took a measured breath, pushing down the storm brewing inside him. You understand what you just told me, don't you? Her expression remained firm. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. He exhaled slowly, dragging a hand through his hair. He should have seen this coming. Jack had been by his side for years, but lately his movements had been too careful, his reassurances too smooth. Now it made sense. He wasn't just waiting for Levi to return. He was waiting for the perfect moment to take everything from him. And Betsy Carter had unknowingly stepped into the middle of it. Levi leaned against his desk, his voice calm but laced with something sharper. You're involved now. Her brows furrowed. I didn't. You did, he cut in smoothly. The moment you came to me, the moment you overheard Jack at that hospital, You became part of something bigger than you realize. Betsy's lips pressed together. I didn't come here to play games, Mr. Whitmore. He almost smirked. That makes two of us. She sighed, shaking her head. I told you because I thought you deserved to know. But if you think I want to be tangled up in whatever this is, you're wrong. I have a job. I have responsibilities. I have a son to take care of. Levi stilled. Son. His gaze flickered over her, reassessing. She didn't look old enough to have a child, but the exhaustion in her eyes told a different story. You have a son. Betsy hesitated, as if regretting saying it out loud, but then she squared her shoulders. Yes, Kyson, he's 8. Something unexplainable settled in Levi's chest. Maybe it was the way she said it, like the words alone carried weight. A single mother, a nurse. And yet she was standing in his office, risking her own peace of mind to warn him about a betrayal that had nothing to do with her. He couldn't afford distractions right now, but this, it wasn't a distraction. It was a puzzle piece. Levi straightened. You shouldn't have come here. Betsy's frustration flared. I was trying to help you. I don't doubt that. His voice was measured, but firm. But now you're on Jack's radar. She stiffened. He doesn't know who I am. He will, Levi said smoothly. And when he does, you won't just be the nurse who overheard something. You'll be a problem. Betsy's breath hitched, but she held her ground. So, what? I should have kept quiet. Levi tilted his head slightly. That would have been the safer choice. She scoffed, a humorless laugh slipping past her lips. Right, because the safest choice is always the best one. For the first time in a long time, Levi felt the corner of his mouth twitch. She was different, unapologetically so, and he wasn't sure what to make of it. Before he could respond, his office door swung open. His assistant, Claire, stepped in, her face pale. Mr. Whitmore, she said quickly, you have an urgent delivery. Levi frowned. From who? Claire hesitated before stepping aside. 2 security guards entered carrying a sleek black envelope on a silver tray. Levi's stomach tightened. Black envelopes were never good news. He walked over, picking it up carefully. His name was written on the front in bold, elegant script. No return address, no company seal. Betsy shifted beside him, her eyes flicking to the envelope. What is that? Levi didn't answer. He slid his finger under the flap, pulling out a single sheet of paper. You should have stayed gone. His pulse slowed, then quickened. Betsy's breath hitched. What does it say? Levi's jaw clenched, the paper crinkling in his grip. Someone wanted him to back off, to disappear. The message was clear. He turned to Claire. Who delivered this? She swallowed hard. It was left at the front desk. No one saw who dropped it off. Of course. Levi took a steady breath. He wasn't the kind of man who ran from threats. But something about this wasn't just business. It felt personal. And Betsy Carter had walked into the middle of it. He looked at her again, his expression unreadable. You need to leave. Her brows pulled together. Excuse me? You need to go back to your life. Forget this conversation. Forget me. Betsy's frustration flared again. Are you serious? I just risked my job to tell you the truth and now you're shutting me out? Levi's voice was controlled, but there was something behind it. A quiet intensity. I don't shut people out, Miss Carter. I protect them. For the first time, Betsy hesitated. There was something in his tone, something deeper than arrogance, but she wasn't the kind of woman who backed down. I don't need your protection, she said, lifting her chin. Levi exhaled slowly, almost amused. You don't know that yet. Their gazes locked, an invisible tension stretching between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Levi looked at the crumpled note in his hand. Someone was watching him. Someone wanted him gone. And Betsy Carter had unknowingly put herself right in the crosshairs. He wasn't going to let her become collateral damage, but he also wasn't going to let this go. Because for the first time in years, Levi Whitmore had something to lose, and he wasn't about to let anyone take it from him. Levi sat behind his desk, the black envelope still clenched in his hand. The words burned into his mind. You should have stayed gone. Jack Monroe was moving faster than he thought. Across from him, Betsy hadn't moved. She was still standing there, arms crossed, eyes locked onto him like she was trying to piece him together. He should have insisted she leave. He should have sent her back to her life, back to her son, before she got dragged any deeper into something she didn't belong in. But she had already crossed that line, and there was no turning back now. You look like you've seen this before, Betsy finally said. Levi exhaled, unfolding the paper slowly, his fingers pressing into the sharp edges. Threats aren't new in my world. Her brows pulled together. But this one means something different, doesn't it? Levi lifted his gaze to hers, surprised. She was perceptive. Too perceptive. Why are you still here, Betsy? His voice was calm, measured. She let out a dry laugh. Because I think you're making a mistake. He arched a brow. Do you? Yes, she shot back. You think pushing me away is going to fix this? Newsflash, Levi. I was already involved the second I overheard Jack. Walking away now doesn't erase that. Her tone had a quiet force to it, something unshaken despite the weight of what she had just stepped into. Levi leaned back, studying her. She didn't realize it yet, but she had just said the one thing that made sense. You don't trust people easily, do you? She asked, her voice softer now. His fingers traced the edge of the envelope. Trust is a liability in my world. That's a sad way to live. Levi let out a quiet chuckle, though there was no humor in it. It's an effective one. She held his gaze for a moment longer, as if debating something. Then, finally, she sighed and dropped into the chair across from him. You said I need to leave, that I need to forget this conversation. Forget you, she said. But here's the thing, Levi. I can't. Because if Jack Monroe is the kind of man who's willing to take you down, what makes you think he won't come after me too? Levi stilled. She wasn't wrong. If Jack suspected that Betsy had told him anything, she was already a problem, and problems had a way of being eliminated. He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. You don't give up, do you? No, Betsy said, tilting her chin slightly. And if you're smart, you won't either. Levi tapped his fingers against the desk, his mind running calculations. There was no logical reason to keep her close. She wasn't part of his world. She didn't belong in his world. But keeping her at a distance wasn't an option anymore. A sharp knock sounded at the door. His assistant, Claire, stepped in, her expression tense. Mr. Whitmore, Jack Monroe is here to see you. Levi didn't move, didn't react. He merely set the black envelope down, smoothing it against the surface of his desk. Betsy stiffened across from him. Let him in, Levi said. Claire hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside. Jack Monroe strode into the office like he owned the place, a casual smile tugging at his lips. He was good at that, pretending, convincing people he was harmless. But Levi had built an empire on reading people, and today, Jack looked like a man who had something to hide. Levi, Jack said smoothly, spreading his arms. Good to see you back where you belong. Levi didn't return the greeting. His eyes flicked to Betsy, who was watching Jack like she was memorizing his every move. Jack finally noticed her and lifted a brow. And who do we have here? Betsy didn't flinch under his scrutiny. Levi leaned back in his chair, voice even. Someone who knows more than she should. Jack let out a small laugh, but his eyes sharpened. Levi gestured to the seat beside Betsy. Sit down, Jack. Jack hesitated just for a fraction of a second before settling into the chair. All right, what's this about? Levi folded his hands together. You tell me. Jack gave him a look of mock confusion. Levi, I don't... Cut the act. Levi's tone was sharp, controlled. You've been making moves while I was gone. I want to know exactly what you've done, and I want to know now. Jack let out a slow breath, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I know being away must have made you a little paranoid, but... Levi slid the black envelope across the desk. Jack's smile faltered. He reached for it slowly, unfolding the paper with careful fingers. His eyes scanned the words, and for the first time, Levi saw something flicker across his face. Recognition. Jack knew exactly what it meant. Nothing to say? Levi asked quietly. Jack's expression smoothed over, his confidence slipping back into place. He let out a small chuckle, setting the paper down. Levi, you get letters like this all the time. It's probably some disgruntled employee or an old investor trying to stir trouble. Levi tilted his head. And yet you recognized it the second you read it. Jack's jaw tensed. Levi let the silence stretch. Let the weight of the moment settle. Then, finally, he said, I'm going to find out what you've done, Jack. And when I do, I won't be nearly as patient as I am right now. Jack stood, smoothing his suit. You're looking for ghosts, Levi. I'd hate to see you waste your energy on something that isn't real. Levi's gaze stayed locked onto his. And I'd hate to see you underestimate me. Jack held his stare for just a second longer before turning on his heel and striding toward the door. But as he reached for the handle, he paused. And then, with a glance over his shoulder, he said, Take care, Levi. I'd hate for you to come back just to lose everything all over again. Levi's hands curled into fists beneath the desk, but he forced his expression to remain neutral. Jack walked out. Betsy let out a slow breath. Levi leaned forward, voice calm, steady. Now, do you see why I wanted you to leave? Betsy looked at him, something new in her eyes. Determination. You think I'm scared? She asked. You should be, Levi said. Betsy shook her head. Number I should be smart. She leaned forward, meeting his gaze without hesitation. And right now. The smartest thing I can do is stay exactly where I am. Levi studied her, something unreadable flashing across his face. Then, finally, he let out a slow exhale. Then I hope you're ready for what's coming. Levi sat in the dim glow of his office, staring at the black envelope still resting on his desk. The words haunted him. You should have stayed gone. Jack had read the message and masked his reaction well, but Levi had caught it, the brief flicker of recognition. He knew something. The door clicked shut, and Betsy settled into the chair across from him. Arms crossed, she wasn't leaving. He wasn't sure if that irritated him or impressed him. Maybe both. So, she said, voice steady, what now? Levi let out a slow breath, his fingers tapping against the polished surface of his desk. Now, I figure out just how deep this goes. Betsy studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. You already know Jack is working with Turner. Isn't that enough? Levi exhaled sharply, standing and walking to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Chicago skyline. Knowing isn't the same as proving. Silence settled between them. He felt her watching him, felt the weight of the tension thick in the room. He didn't like this. He didn't like not knowing the extent of the damage. Didn't like that Jack had gotten this far without him seeing the cracks forming beneath his own empire. Betsy's voice cut through his thoughts. What if I can help? Levi turned, brows pulling together. You want to help? Her jaw tightened. I don't think I have a choice anymore. Jack knows I was in that hospital. If he finds out I told you, I'm not exactly on safe ground. Levi folded his arms. And what exactly do you think you can do? Betsy sat up straighter. I know how to listen. I know how to read between the lines. I've spent years being overlooked, underestimated, hearing things I wasn't supposed to hear. People talk freely around nurses because they don't see us as a threat. Levi tilted his head slightly, intrigued. She had a point, and something about the way she said it, the quiet certainty in her tone, made him believe her. She met his gaze. I can find out more. Levi studied her, weighing his options. He should say no. This wasn't her world. She had no idea what she was walking into. And yet, she was already in it, whether she wanted to be or not. You have a son, he said suddenly. Betsy blinked. Yeah, I told you that. Which means you have something to lose. She inhaled sharply, but her gaze didn't waver. So do you. His jaw tightened. This isn't a game. I'm not treating it like one. Levi stared at her, his pulse thrumming with something he couldn't quite name. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't afraid of him, of this, of what it could mean, and that made her dangerous in a way he hadn't anticipated. Finally, he nodded. Fine, but we do this on my terms. Betsy let out a slow breath. Which are, I keep you close. You don't make a move without telling me first. Her brows lifted slightly. That almost sounds like you care. Levi's lips quirked into something that wasn't quite a smile. Almost. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced down, a single message from an unknown number. Stop looking, or you'll regret it. A familiar chill crept down his spine. Someone was watching. Someone knew he wasn't backing down. Betsy caught the change in his expression. What is it? Levi set the phone down carefully. It seems I'm running out of time. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, Jack isn't the only problem I have. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. So what do we do? Levi exhaled, running a hand through his hair. We get ahead of them. Betsy studied him. How? A slow, calculating smile touched his lips. By giving them exactly what they don't want. Betsy frowned. Which is? Levi turned back to her, his blue eyes sharp with something dangerous. The truth. For the first time since she walked into his office, Betsy hesitated, because something about the way he said it, the certainty in his voice, told her one thing. Levi Whitmore wasn't just planning to fight back. He was planning to win. Betsy sat across from Levi in the back corner of an upscale cafe, her fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The place was dimly lit, a quiet hum of conversation filling the space, but she could barely focus on anything other than the man sitting across from her. Levi Whitmore had a presence that demanded attention, even when he wasn't speaking. The air around him felt charged, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room as if he was piecing together a puzzle only he could see. It was infuriating, and if she was being honest, intriguing. She set the cup down with a soft clink. All right, you said we need to get ahead of them. What exactly does that mean? Levi leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. It means we stop playing defense and start taking control of the narrative. Betsy frowned. And how do you suggest we do that? Because unless you have a way of making Jack and his little coup disappear overnight, I don't see how we get ahead of anything. Levi smirked, as if her challenge amused him. We don't need to make them disappear. We need to make them show their hand. She narrowed her eyes. And you think they'll just, what, confess? Not willingly, he admitted. But I've been in this game long enough to know that people slip up when they think they're winning. Betsy sat back, studying him. She hated how easy he made it sound, like this was just another business deal, another acquisition to maneuver. And where do I fit into this? She asked cautiously. Levi took a sip of his espresso before answering. You heard Jack at the hospital. That means you might be the only person outside of his circle who knows what's coming. They don't see you as a threat yet. Betsy let out a small, humorless laugh. I'm a nurse, Levi, not a spy. He tilted his head slightly. Are you sure about that? Because from what I've seen, you're more observant than most people in my own company. She blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected compliment. Levi set his cup down, eyes never leaving hers. I need you to do something for me. Betsy arched a brow. I knew there was a catch. His lips twitched. I need you to get close to Jack. Her stomach tightened. Excuse me? I don't mean romantically, he clarified, though there was something unreadable in his gaze. Jack doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know what you heard. That makes you valuable. If he sees you as just another outsider, someone who happens to be connected to me in a small way, he might slip. Betsy crossed her arms. And what exactly am I supposed to say? Hey Jack, I overheard you plotting against Levi Whitmore. Mind telling me more? Levi chuckled. You're smarter than that. Figure out what he wants most and use it. Betsy exhaled, shaking her head. This is insane. Levi leaned back, his expression unreadable. I never said it wasn't. She let the silence settle between them, her mind racing. The logical part of her knew she should walk away. This wasn't her fight. She had a job, a life, a son who needed her. And yet, she was already in it, wasn't she? There was no turning back now. She ran a hand through her hair, sighing. If I do this, if I even entertain this idea, what's stopping Jack from finding out who I really am? Levi's expression darkened slightly. That's where I come in. She frowned. And what's that supposed to mean? His gaze was steady, unwavering. It means I protect what's mine. Betsy's stomach did an unexpected flip at the way he said it, at the way his voice dipped slightly, low and certain. She swallowed. I'm not yours. Levi smirked. Not yet. Betsy rolled her eyes, but there was no heat behind it. She could argue all she wanted, but deep down, she knew the truth. She was already in this, and so was he. Taking a deep breath, she pushed her chair back and stood. Fine. I'll see what I can find out. Levi remained seated, watching her carefully. Be careful. She hesitated for just a second. You too. And then she walked away, knowing that no matter how much she told herself otherwise, nothing about her life would ever be the same again. Betsy paced outside the entrance of Whitmore Tech, the towering glass building reflecting the late afternoon sun. This was a mistake, a big one, but somehow she was still standing here, still about to step into something she had no business being a part of. She glanced at her phone, debating texting Levi. Maybe it wasn't too late to back out. Maybe she could walk away from this before it got worse. But then she thought about Jack Monroe, the way he had waltzed into Levi's office, smug and calculating, like he had already won. She thought about the way Levi had looked at that black envelope, how something in his usually unshakable expression had flickered. This wasn't just business. It was personal. And whether she liked it or not, she was in it now. With a steadying breath, she adjusted the strap of her purse and walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was as sleek as she had imagined. High ceilings, minimalist design, and an air of exclusivity that reminded her she didn't belong here. A young receptionist glanced up, offering a polite but distant smile. Can I help you? Betsy forced herself to smile back. Yes, I have an appointment with Mr. Monroe. The receptionist frowned slightly, tapping at her keyboard. Name? Betsy Carter. A beat of silence. Then the woman's expression shifted ever so slightly before she nodded. One moment. Betsy's stomach tightened. The reaction was small, but it was there. Jack knew she was coming. She exhaled slowly, scanning the lobby, taking in every exit, every security guard stationed at the elevators. Maybe she was being paranoid, but something about the energy of this place felt different. Ms. Carter? She turned back as a receptionist gestured toward the elevators. "Mr. Monroe will see you now, 3rd floor." Betsy nodded, stepping into the sleek elevator and watching the doors close with a quiet hush. The numbers above the doors lit up one by one, each floor bringing her closer to the unknown. She tried not to think about how easily this could go wrong. The doors slid open to a quieter floor, modern but slightly less polished than the lobby. Jack's office was at the end of the hall, the door already cracked open. She knocked once before stepping inside. Jack Monroe was leaning against his desk, arms crossed, a carefully crafted smile on his face. He wasn't an intimidating man, not in the traditional sense, but there was something about him that set her on edge. He was too smooth, too calculated. "Miss Carter," he said, pushing off the desk. "I have to say, I was surprised to hear from you." Betsy mirrored his polite smile. "I imagine you were." Jack gestured to the chair across from him. "Please sit." She did, keeping her back straight, trying not to let her nerves show. Jack studied her for a moment before settling into the chair behind his desk. "So, what can I do for you?" Betsy hesitated, rehearsing the lie in her head one last time. "I heard about what happened between you and Levi." Jack lifted a brow. "Did you now?" She nodded, crossing her legs slowly. "And I heard you're looking for people who know how to read the room." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "That's an interesting way to put it." She tilted her head slightly. "Am I wrong?" Jack tapped his fingers against the desk, watching her. "You work in a hospital, Ms. Carter. What exactly is it you think I need from someone like you?" Betsy leaned forward just enough to make it look intentional. "People underestimate nurses. They talk around us like we're invisible. They say things they shouldn't." Jack smirked. "And you're saying you've heard things?" Betsy held his gaze. "I'm saying I know when something big is about to happen." The room fell into silence and she willed herself not to fidget. Finally, Jack nodded slowly, as if considering her words. "You're an interesting woman, Betsy." She forced a light laugh. "I get that a lot." Jack studied her for another beat before leaning back. "You're right. Levi and we aren't exactly seeing eye to eye these days. But business is business. You understand." Betsy kept her expression neutral. "Of course." Jack exhaled, glancing toward the window. "Loyalty is a funny thing, Ms. Carter. People like Levi think it's the most valuable currency. But in my experience..." He looked back at her, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Loyalty is just another word for leverage." Betsy swallowed. "And do you have leverage, Mr. Monroe?" Jack's smile widened. "That depends. Are you looking to switch sides?" Her heart pounded, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she gave him a small, careful smile. "I'm looking for the winning side." Jack let out a low laugh, standing and adjusting his cufflinks. "I like you, Ms. Carter." Betsy stood as well, gripping the strap of her purse a little tighter. Jack walked around the desk, stopping just beside her. "I have a feeling this won't be our last conversation." Betsy forced a smirk. "I have a feeling you're right." Jack extended a hand, and for a split second, she hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm, controlled, and it made her stomach turn. "See you soon," he said. Betsy offered one last polite smile, before walking out of the office, keeping her pace even as she headed toward the elevator. It wasn't until she stepped outside into the cold evening air that she finally exhaled, her fingers still tingling from where Jack had touched her hand. She reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over Levi's number. She had done it. She had gotten inside. But as she stared at the screen, a quiet dread settled in her chest. Because Jack Monroe wasn't just dangerous. He was watching. And she had just made herself visible. Betsy's heart pounded as she stepped onto the sidewalk outside Whitmore Tech. The cold air hit her, sharp and unforgiving. but it did nothing to quiet the rush of adrenaline in her veins. Jack Monroe had taken the bait. He was interested. That was good. And yet, something about the way he looked at her made her skin prickle. She pulled her coat tighter around her, walking toward the quiet corner of the block where Levi's car was parked. The tinted window rolled down as she approached, revealing Levi sitting in the back seat, his expression unreadable. "Get in," he said smoothly. She didn't hesitate. The second she slid into the seat, the door shut behind her, cocooning them in an insulated silence. Levi studied her carefully, his blue eyes sharp. "How did it go?" Betsy let out a slow breath, shaking off the tension from her meeting. "He bought it, or at least, he's interested. He didn't say much, but he was testing me, trying to figure out if I was useful to him." Levi's gaze flicked to the window, his fingers tapping lightly against the leather armrest. "He will. He doesn't trust easily. That means he'll keep you close just to see what you do next." She swallowed. "And what do I do next?" Levi turned back to her, his jaw tightening just slightly. "You let him think he's winning." Betsy let out a dry laugh. "I don't like the idea of pretending to work for a man who's trying to destroy you." Levi smirked, his gaze dark with something unreadable. "Welcome to my world," she exhaled, rubbing her temples. "This isn't my world, Levi. I don't know how to play these games." His eyes softened just slightly. "You're doing better than you think." She shook her head, leaning back into the seat. "I don't even know why I'm doing this." Levi studied her for a moment before speaking. "Yes, you do." The car fell into silence. Betsy wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was doing this because something about all of this, about Jack, about Levi, about the way this entire situation was unfolding, felt bigger than just corporate betrayal. It felt personal. Levi shifted, his voice quieter now. "You could walk away, right now. I wouldn't stop you." She turned to look at him, searching his face. There was something in his expression, something unexpected. "You'd let me walk away?" she asked softly. His jaw ticked. "I don't let people do anything. I give them a choice." Betsy swallowed. "And what happens if I stay?" Levi held her gaze, his voice smooth but heavy with meaning. "Then you're in this with me, and once you're in, there's no halfway." She felt it then, that pull, that invisible force that had been there since the first moment she had stopped him at the hospital. She should have walked away, but instead she whispered, "Then I guess I'm in." Levi didn't move, didn't react, but something in his eyes flickered, something she couldn't name. He exhaled slowly, like he had been expecting her to say that all along. "Then we do this right." Betsy let out a slow breath. "What's next?" Levi's gaze darkened slightly, the sharp edges of his features more pronounced in the dim light of the car. "Jack's expecting you to prove yourself. We let him think you're doing exactly that." Betsy frowned. "Meaning?" Levi leaned forward just slightly. "I need you to find out what he's really after." Her stomach twisted. "And how do I do that?" Levi smirked. "You're smart. You'll figure it out." She exhaled, shaking her head. "I hate how confident you are in me." His smirk widened. "You'll get used to it." Betsy rolled her eyes, but there was no real frustration behind it. Levi reached for the door handle, pausing before opening it. "I'll have someone watching you. If anything feels off, you tell me." Betsy raised a brow. "And if I don't?" His jaw tightened just slightly. "Then you'll regret it." A shiver ran down her spine, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Levi opened the door, the cold air rushing in. "Go home, Betsy." She hesitated. "Levi—" He turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "What?" She searched his face, trying to find the right words, but in the end, she just nodded. Nothing. She stepped out of the car, the door shutting behind her, and as Levi's car pulled away, she realized something. She wasn't just in this, she was in it with him. Betsy sat at the small kitchen table, staring blankly at the untouched cup of tea in front of her. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional sound of Kyson shifting in his room, fast asleep. She should have been resting too, but her mind wouldn't let her. Jack Monroe had taken the bait, and Levi was pulling the strings, guiding her deeper into something she didn't fully understand. The weight of it sat heavy on her chest. She wasn't naive. She knew this wasn't just about business. This was about power, about control. And she had willingly placed herself between two men who were playing a game she had no experience in. Her phone vibrated against the table. A single text. "Levi, are you home?" She hesitated before typing back. "Betsy, yes." A moment later, her phone buzzed again. "Levi." "Good." She exhaled, rolling her eyes. "That was it? Just good." Before she could type a sarcastic reply, another message appeared. "Levi, Jack will test you soon. Be ready." Betsy's stomach tightened. "Betsy, what kind of test?" A long pause. "Levi, the kind you can't fail." Her fingers hovered over the screen. "Betsy, you really know how to reassure a person." This time, Levi's reply was almost instant. "Levi, I do my best." She huffed, shaking her head. The fact that he had time to be smug while in the middle of all this was beyond her. But beneath the sarcasm, she knew he was right. Jack was going to test her, and she had to be ready. The next morning, she found out exactly what that meant. Betsy walked into the hospital for her shift, the familiar scent of antiseptic and coffee grounding her. She had been here for years. This was her world. A place of healing, of purpose, not a battleground for corporate warfare. And yet, as she stepped into the break room, her entire body went cold. Jack Monroe was sitting at the table. Her breath caught, but she forced herself to keep moving. Act normal. Don't react. He looked up, flashing that same polished smile. "Miss Carter, what a coincidence." Betsy set her bag down, her fingers tightening around the strap. "Mr. Monroe, what brings you here?" Jack leaned back, casually sipping the coffee someone had clearly fetched for him. "I had a meeting with one of our partners in the medical research division. Thought I'd stop by and check out the place. See what all the fuss is about." Her heart pounded, but she kept her expression neutral. "I didn't realize Whitmore Tech had medical ties." Jack's smirk widened. "Oh, Betsy, we have ties to everything." The way he said her name sent a shiver down her spine. She pulled a mug from the cabinet, giving herself a moment to think. "So, is this just a friendly visit, or should I be worried?" Jack chuckled. "Smart question. I like that about you." Betsy turned, keeping her expression light. "I try." Jack watched her for a moment, then set his coffee down. "I have a job for you." Her stomach tightened. Here it was, the test. She tilted her head slightly. "What kind of job?" Jack's smile was easy, but his eyes were calculating. "Levi has a meeting with a private investor this evening. Someone very important. I need to know who it is." Betsy felt the ground shift beneath her. She forced a frown. "Why would I know that?" Jack shrugged. "You have a way of being in the right places at the right time. Thought I'd see if that luck extends to Whitmore's schedule." Betsy crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "And if I don't know?" Jack stood, adjusting his cuffs. "Then you find out." Betsy's heart pounded. "And if I say no?" Jack stilled, then smiled again. That would be disappointing. There was no direct threat in his voice, but she felt it anyway. Jack picked up his coffee, walking toward the door before pausing just beside her. "I like you, Betsy. I think you're smart. But smart people know which doors to open and which ones to leave shut." And with that, he was gone. Betsy gripped the counter, trying to steady her breath. Jack had just put her on a leash. Now, she had to figure out how to slip it off without him noticing. That night, she found herself in Levi's office once again. He leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed, as she told him everything. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. "He's testing you." "Yeah, I got that part," she muttered, running a hand through her hair. Levi smirked, but his expression sobered quickly. "You can't give him what he wants." Betsy frowned. "Then he'll know I'm not really on his side." Levi studied her for a moment before shaking his head. "We'll give him something else." Her stomach twisted. "Levi, you can't fail this test," he said quietly. "But that doesn't mean we play by his rules." Betsy exhaled. "You have a plan." His lips curled slightly. "Always." She hated how much that reassured her, because if she was going to survive this, she needed to trust Levi Whitmore. And that terrified her more than anything Jack Monroe could ever do. Betsy sat across from Levi in the dimly lit lounge of an exclusive members-only club. The air smelled of aged whiskey and power, a place where deals were made behind closed doors and fortunes shifted with a handshake. The soft hum of a jazz piano played in the background, but all she could focus on was the man sitting in front of her. Levi swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his gaze sharp but unreadable. "Jack thinks he's in control," he murmured, voice low. "He wants to see if you're useful, if you can be trusted." Betsy exhaled slowly, her fingers wrapped around the stem of her untouched wine glass. "So, what do we do?" Levi smirked slightly, his eyes glinting with something almost dangerous. "We give him exactly what he wants." Her stomach tightened. "You want me to actually find out who your investor is?" "No," Levi said, tilting his head slightly. "I want you to make him believe you did." She frowned. "And how do we do that without getting caught in a lie?" Levi set his drink down, leaning forward just enough that his presence felt heavier in the space between them. "We feed him false information." Betsy's breath caught. "You want to set him up?" A slow smirk curved his lips. "I want to see how desperate he is." She shook her head, her fingers tightening around her glass. "Levi, if Jack finds out I gave him bad intel—" "He won't," Levi interrupted, his voice smooth, reassuring, "because he'll be too busy chasing a lead that doesn't exist." Betsy stared at him, her heartbeat unsteady. "And what if he figures it out?" Levi's smirk faded, his expression turning serious. "Then we'll know exactly how far he's willing to go." The weight of his words settled between them, and Betsy knew there was no turning back. She had chosen this path, chosen to stand at Levi's side. And now, she had to play the part. She let out a slow breath. "What's the name?" Levi reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. He slid it across the table toward her. Betsy hesitated before picking it up. Her eyes scanned the name printed in elegant silver lettering. Dominic Grayson. She looked up, brow furrowed. "Who is this?" Levi's smirk returned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "A ghost." Betsy felt the full weight of what he was saying. Dominic Grayson wasn't real. He was a fabrication, a perfectly crafted illusion, meant to lead Jack Monroe down a dead-end road. Her pulse quickened. "This is risky." Levi held her gaze. "So is everything we're doing." She exhaled sharply, setting the card down. "And you're sure Jack will take the bait?" Levi leaned back in his chair, looking every bit the untouchable businessman. "If he's as desperate as I think he is, he'll have no choice." Betsy pressed her fingers against her temples. "I can't believe I'm doing this." Levi chuckled softly. "You're doing it because you know it's the only way." She dropped her hands to her lap, shaking her head. "You're impossible," he smirked. "You'll get used to it." Betsy let out a frustrated sigh. I don't want to get used to it. Something shifted in Levi's expression. He studied her for a long moment before speaking, his voice quieter now. Then why are you still here? Her breath caught, and for a second she didn't have an answer, because the truth, the real truth, was too complicated, too unsettling, too personal. So instead, she said, because you need me. Levi's lips parted slightly, like he wanted to argue. But then, something softened in his gaze. I do. The admission sent a strange warmth through her chest, but she pushed it away. Betsy cleared her throat, straightening her shoulders. All right, let's do this. Levi nodded, satisfaction flickering in his eyes. Tomorrow you meet with Jack, you give him the name, and then... He smirked slightly. We watch the chaos unfold. Betsy let out a slow breath. I hope you know what you're doing. Levi lifted his glass, his voice filled with quiet confidence. I always do. She wasn't sure if that reassured her or terrified her. The next morning, Betsy found herself standing outside a cafe, her hands wrapped around a to-go cup of coffee as she waited. Jack Monroe had sent a simple text. Meet me at 9. Don't be late. The door chimed as she stepped inside, scanning the room. Jack was already there, seated at a corner table, looking as relaxed as ever. But Betsy knew better. He was never relaxed. She approached, sliding into the seat across from him. Jack looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face. Betsy, always a pleasure. She forced a smirk. I'm sure it is. Jack chuckled, tapping his fingers against the table. So, what do you have for me? Betsy took a slow sip of her coffee, keeping her expression neutral. I found out who the investor is. Jack's smile widened, but there was something sharp in his gaze. Do tell. She slid the black card across the table, just like Levi had done for her the night before. Jack picked it up, his eyes scanning the name. There was a long pause. Then, Jack let out a low hum. Dominic Grayson. Betsy nodded, keeping her voice steady. Levi's meeting with him tomorrow night. Jack smirked, spinning the card between his fingers. Interesting. Betsy's pulse pounded. This was the moment. If he sensed anything off, if he questioned it, this entire plan would fall apart. Jack studied the card for another beat before slipping it into his pocket. He leaned back, giving her a look that sent a chill down her spine. Good work, Betsy. She forced herself to breathe. I aim to please. Jack grinned, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. Let's see if you live up to that. He walked away, leaving Betsy sitting there, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. She had done it. Now all she could do was wait, and hope Levi Whitmore was right. Betsy's stomach twisted as she sat in her car outside Whitmore Tech, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The meeting with Jack had gone exactly as Levi had planned. Too easily, in fact. Jack had taken the bait. He had swallowed the name, Dominic Grayson, without hesitation. But something didn't feel right. She could still hear his voice, low and calculating. Let's see if you live up to that. A shiver ran through her. She glanced at her phone. No messages from Levi, no updates, just silence. With a deep breath, she stepped out of her car and made her way toward the entrance of the building. The high-rise loomed above her, sleek glass reflecting the dimming evening light. She swiped her visitor's badge at the security desk, nodding at the guard before stepping into the private elevator that led to Levi's office. Her reflection stared back at her in the polished metal doors, her face set in a mask of composure. She had spent years dealing with emergencies at the hospital, making life-altering decisions under pressure. And yet, this game of deception, of hidden agendas, felt heavier. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet chime, and she stepped into the penthouse office. Levi was already waiting, standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his phone in one hand, a glass of whiskey in the other. He didn't turn around as she entered, but she could feel the tension rolling off him. She shut the door softly behind her. I did it. Levi took a slow sip of his drink before finally turning to face her. His gaze was unreadable, but there was something in the way he studied her, like he was searching for cracks in the surface. Did he believe you? Betsy swallowed. Yes. A muscle in Levi's jaw ticked. He set his glass down on the table beside him. Then we wait. She frowned, stepping closer. That's it? He lifted a brow. What did you expect? I don't know. She let out a breath, rubbing the back of her neck. I guess I thought you'd be a little more, I don't know, relieved? Levi studied her for a long moment before speaking. Jack is a smart man. Smart enough to know that I don't make mistakes easily. Her stomach twisted. You think he suspects something? Levi exhaled slowly. I think he's cautious, which means he'll try to confirm the information before making his next move. Betsy's pulse quickened. And what happens when he realizes Dominic Grayson doesn't exist? Levi's lips curled slightly, but it wasn't amusement. It was something darker. By the time he realizes that, he'll have already exposed himself. Betsy shook her head. This is insane. Levi took a step toward her, his presence commanding, but there was something softer beneath the intensity. You knew what this was when you agreed to it. She let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. No, Levi, I thought I knew. But every time I think I have a grip on this, it just gets more complicated. Levi's gaze flickered over her, something unreadable in his expression. Are you having second thoughts? She swallowed hard. She should be. She should have walked away the second she realized how deep this was going to go. But instead, she met his gaze and whispered, No. Something shifted between them in that moment. The space between them felt smaller, the air charged with something neither of them wanted to name. Levi's voice was quieter when he spoke again. Good. A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. Betsy took a step back as Levi turned toward the entrance. Come in. The door opened and Claire, his assistant, stepped inside. Her face was pale, her usual composed demeanor replaced with something close to panic. Mr. Whitmore, you need to see this. Levi's entire posture shifted. What is it? Claire hesitated, glancing at Betsy before speaking. Jack Monroe just announced a major acquisition deal. Levi stilled. What? Claire handed him a tablet. Turner Innovations. They're making a move. Betsy's breath caught. Elliot Turner? Jack's working with him? Levi's jaw tightened as he scanned the screen. It looks like they've been working together longer than I thought. Betsy stepped closer, glancing at the headline. The article was fresh, published less than 10 minutes ago. The deal was huge, a strategic partnership between Jack Monroe and Elliot Turner, solidifying their power in the tech world. This wasn't just about taking your company, Betsy murmured. They're merging forces. Levi's grip on the tablet tightened. They're trying to push me out. Betsy's pulse pounded. Then that means they knew, Levi cut in. His voice was dangerously quiet. Jack must have figured it out already. The fake investor, the misdirection, he saw through it. A chill ran down Betsy's spine. Then why didn't he call me out on it? Levi's gaze was dark, calculating. Because he wants me to see this. Betsy's heart slammed against her ribs. He's not playing defense, he's making his move. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Claire shifted uneasily. Sir, what do you want me to do? Levi took a slow breath, rolling his shoulders back, forcing the tension out of his body. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, collected. Nothing, he said. We wait. Betsy stared at him in disbelief. Wait, Levi, we just handed Jack a reason to come after you. Levi's smirk was slow, controlled. No, Betsy, we just gave him a reason to make a mistake. Betsy swallowed. What if he doesn't? Levi's gaze darkened, a quiet confidence in his voice. Then I'll make him. The room was silent. Then Levi turned to Claire. Cancel my evening meetings and call Detective Brooks. I think it's time we had a conversation. Betsy's breath caught. You're bringing in the police? Levi glanced at her. Jack and Turner think they control the game. It's time we remind them who they're playing against. Betsy exhaled, pressing a hand to her forehead. I really don't like how much you enjoy this. Levi smirked. You'll get used to it. She rolled her eyes but didn't argue, because deep down she knew this wasn't just a power struggle anymore. This was war, and Levi Whitmore never lost. Betsy sat across from Levi in the back of his private car, her fingers twisting together in her lap as the city lights blurred past. The silence between them was thick, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Jack Monroe had made his move. He had aligned himself with Elliot Turner, and now the pieces on the board had shifted. The game wasn't just about control anymore. It was about survival. Levi leaned back against the leather seat, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. She could see the wheels turning in his head, calculating every possible outcome. He looked calm. Too calm, that was what scared her the most. She exhaled slowly, breaking the silence. Tell me you saw this coming. Levi glanced at her, his blue eyes flickering with something unreadable. I knew Jack was desperate. I didn't know he'd be this reckless. Betsy shook her head. Reckless? He just secured a deal with Turner Innovations. That doesn't exactly scream reckless to me. Levi smirked, but there was no humor behind it. That's because you don't see the whole picture yet. Betsy frowned. Then enlighten me. Levi shifted slightly, his fingers tapping against the armrest. Jack wants power. Turner wants me out of the way. But the problem is neither of them actually trust each other. This partnership, it's a ticking clock. Betsy's heart pounded. And what happens when time runs out? Levi's smirk deepened. They destroy each other. She swallowed, not sure whether to be impressed or terrified by how easily he said it. She let out a slow breath, glancing out the window. So what's your next move? Levi was quiet for a moment, then turned to face her fully. Jack wanted me to see this deal. He wanted me to know he wasn't afraid, which means... He's waiting for you to react, Betsy finished, realization dawning. Levi nodded. And that's where he made his first mistake. She exhaled, rubbing her temples. I don't know how you do this. He arched a brow. Do what? She gestured vaguely. This. The power plays. The manipulation. The strategy. Levi's smirk faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. You learn fast when you don't have a choice. There was something in his voice, something that made her chest tighten, a glimpse into a part of him she didn't know yet. She hesitated before speaking. And did you ever have a choice, Levi? His gaze lingered on her for a beat too long. Then he looked away, back out the window. No, he said simply. The answer sat between them, heavier than she expected. She didn't push, not yet. Instead, she refocused. What do you need me to do? Levi glanced at her again, something flickering behind his expression. He leaned forward slightly, his presence filling the space between them. Jack still thinks you're on his side, he murmured. That's our advantage. Her stomach twisted. You want me to go back to him? Levi nodded. We need to know what they're planning next. Betsy exhaled, pressing her fingers against her temples. You really don't ask for small favors, do you? Levi smirked. I told you, once you're in, there's no halfway. She rolled her eyes. Yeah, I remember. A small silence settled between them. Then Levi's voice dropped, quieter this time. I wouldn't ask you to do this if I didn't think you could handle it. Betsy blinked. For all of his confidence, all of his control, there was something in the way he said it that made her chest tighten. He trusted her. And for some reason, that was more dangerous than anything Jack Monroe could throw at her. She let out a slow breath. All right, I'll do it. Levi's smirk returned, but there was something softer in his eyes. Good. The car slowed as they pulled up in front of Betsy's apartment building. She reached for the door handle but hesitated. Levi. He looked at her. She swallowed. Be careful. Something flickered across his face. A beat passed. Then he murmured, You too. Betsy stepped out of the car, the door shutting behind her with a quiet click. As the car pulled away, she exhaled, her heart still unsteady. She was in this now, and there was no turning back. Betsy sat across from Jack Monroe in a dimly lit private lounge, the kind of place where secrets were exchanged under the glow of expensive whiskey and power plays were disguised as casual conversations. She had been here before, once with Levi, watching him work a room like he owned it. But tonight, she was alone, and she had to be convincing. Jack leaned back in his chair, his usual polished smirk in place, but there was something sharper in his eyes. He was testing her, watching her. So, he said, sipping his drink slowly, how does it feel? Betsy tilted her head, feigning confusion. How does what feel? Jack smirked. Being caught between two kings. Her stomach twisted, but she didn't let it show. I wouldn't call Levi a king. Jack chuckled. No? Then what would you call him? Betsy shrugged, keeping her voice casual. A man who doesn't know when to walk away. Jack's smirk widened, but there was something cold beneath it. And what about me? She lifted her glass to her lips, stalling. I guess that depends on what you want me to say. Jack leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. I want you to tell me what side you're really on. Her breath hitched, but she kept her expression neutral. She had known this was coming. Jack wasn't the type to let her keep playing both sides. She exhaled slowly, setting her glass down with careful precision. I'm on the side that wins. Jack let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. That's the right answer. Betsy forced a smirk, but her stomach was in knots. Jack studied her for a long moment, then leaned back, stretching his arms along the back of the booth. Tell me something, Betsy. She raised a brow. What? Do you trust Levi? The question hit harder than she expected. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Jack saw it. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. You do. Betsy forced herself to roll her eyes. Trust is a dangerous thing in your world, Jack. He hummed in agreement. It is, which is why I don't have it for anyone. She swallowed. That sounds lonely. Jack's smirk flickered, just slightly. That sounds smart. Betsy leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. If you don't trust anyone, then why are you trusting me? Jack held her gaze for a long moment, his fingers tapping against his glass. Then, he said, because I already know how this ends. A chill ran down her spine. She forced herself to keep her voice steady. And how does it end? Jack smiled, slow and deliberate, with Levi losing. Her breath caught, but she masked it with a sip of her drink. Jack watched her carefully, then leaned in slightly. He didn't tell you, did he? Her stomach tightened. Tell me what? Jack chuckled, shaking his head. Of course he didn't. That's the thing about Levi. He keeps his cards too close to his chest, even from the people who stand next to him. Betsy's pulse pounded. If you have something to say, just say it. Jack's smirk deepened. I just think it's funny. You're putting all your trust in a man who hasn't been honest with you. Betsy clenched her jaw. Levi doesn't lie to me. Jack tilted his head. Are you sure? Silence stretched between them. Jack sighed, shaking his head like he was disappointed. Let me give you a little advice, Betsy. You should always know when you're being played. Betsy's heart pounded. but she kept her voice even. "And you think Levi's playing me?" Jack leaned in, his voice smooth and quiet. "I know he is." Betsy inhaled slowly. "And what do you want me to do with that information?" Jack smiled. "I want you to ask yourself a very simple question. What happens when Levi doesn't need you anymore?" Her stomach twisted. Jack stood, adjusting his cuffs. "Think about it." And then he was gone. Betsy exhaled shakily, gripping the edge of the table. Jack was lying. He had to be. But then why did his words stay with her long after he left? That night, she found herself standing outside Levi's penthouse, her heart hammering in her chest. She shouldn't be here, not when doubt was creeping in, but she needed answers. She knocked once. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing Levi in a black dress shirt, the top buttons undone, his hair slightly tousled like he had just run a hand through it, his brows pulled together. "Betsy," she swallowed, "we need to talk." Levi studied her for a second, then stepped aside, letting her in. The city lights cast a soft glow over the space, but Betsy barely noticed. She turned to face him, crossing her arms. "Did you lie to me?" Levi stilled. "What?" "About anything. About Jack. About Turner. About why you brought me into this." Levi's jaw tightened. "Where is this coming from?" "Jack," she admitted. "He thinks you're using me." Levi exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. "Jack is trying to get into your head." "That's not an answer." Levi's gaze locked onto hers, frustration flickering in his eyes. "I haven't lied to you, Betsy." She swallowed. "Then tell me the truth. Why am I here?" Levi stepped closer, his voice quieter now. "You know why." Her heart pounded. "Say it." Levi's jaw clenched, something unreadable passing over his face. Then, finally, he murmured, "Because I trust you." Her breath caught. He was close now, the warmth of his presence almost overwhelming. Betsy swallowed hard. "And if that changes?" Levi's gaze darkened. "It won't." Silence. Then, his voice dipped even lower. "Are you still with me?" Betsy exhaled, her pulse unsteady. She should have walked away, but instead she whispered, "Yes." And deep down, she knew. There was no turning back now. Betsy stood by the window of Levi's penthouse. The city stretched out beneath her like a glittering maze of secrets. Her heart was still unsteady, her mind racing from everything Jack had said. What happens when Levi doesn't need you anymore? The words had been circling in her head like a storm, threatening to unravel everything she thought she knew. Behind her, Levi poured himself a drink, the sound of ice clinking against glass, breaking the heavy silence. "You're thinking too hard," he murmured. She turned, arms crossed. "I have a lot to think about." Levi took a slow sip, watching her carefully. "Jack wants you to question me," Betsy exhaled sharply. "And you don't?" His jaw tightened slightly. "No." She let out a dry laugh, shaking her head. "You say that like it's supposed to be easy." Levi set his glass down, stepping closer. "It is," Betsy swallowed. "I don't know if I believe that." Levi held her gaze, his voice lower now. "Then tell me what you need from me." She opened her mouth, then hesitated. What did she need? More reassurance? More promises? Or was it something else? Something she wasn't ready to name? Levi studied her for a beat longer, then exhaled slowly. "You're still here." She blinked. "What?" He stepped even closer, his presence impossible to ignore. "You had every reason to walk away, but you didn't." Betsy's pulse quickened. "Maybe I should have." Levi's lips twitched slightly, but his voice was softer than before. "But you didn't." She hated how much that truth settled inside her. Before she could say anything, Levi's phone buzzed on the table. His expression shifted instantly, the tension snapping back into place. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. Betsy frowned. What is it? Levi picked up his phone, scanning the message. Jack just made his next move. Betsy's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Levi turned the screen toward her. A news headline flashed across it. Breaking. Whitmore Tech CEO under internal investigation for corporate misconduct. Her breath caught. What? Levi's expression was unreadable, but there was a quiet fury beneath the surface. Jack's trying to take me out from the inside. Betsy grabbed the phone, scanning the article. The accusations were vague: misuse of company funds, ethical violations, undisclosed conflicts of interest. None of it was real, but to the outside world, it didn't have to be. He's setting you up, Betsy whispered. Levi exhaled, setting his glass down with careful precision. That's the idea. She looked up at him. So, what do we do? Levi smirked, but there was no amusement behind it. We remind him that I don't go down that easily. Betsy inhaled sharply. Levi, if the board turns on you, they won't. He cut in smoothly. She frowned. You sound awfully sure of that. Levi stepped closer again, his voice quieter now. Because I don't lose, Betsy. Her stomach twisted. This isn't just about winning. Levi studied her, something unreadable flickering across his face. It never was. She hated how much she believed him. Before she could say anything else, his phone buzzed again. Claire's name flashed across the screen. Levi answered. Talk. Claire's voice was urgent. We have a problem. Jack called an emergency board meeting. Tonight. Betsy's breath caught. Levi's jaw tightened. And? Claire hesitated. They're voting on your removal. Silence stretched between them. Then Levi exhaled slowly, his voice dangerously calm. Tell them I'll be there. Claire let out a sharp breath. Levi, this is a setup. I know, he said simply. Betsy stepped closer, her voice urgent. Then why walk into it? Levi finally turned to her, his expression unreadable. Because I want them to think they've won. Her stomach twisted. And then what? Levi smirked slightly, but there was something lethal behind it. Then I show them why they never should have bet against me. Betsy swallowed, realizing something in that moment. Jack thought he had Levi cornered. But Levi Whitmore never walked into a fight he wasn't ready to win. And tonight, he was going to prove it. The boardroom was silent. Every seat around the long, polished table was filled. And yet the tension in the air made it feel empty, like the calm before a storm. A storm that Levi Whitmore was about to unleash. Betsy stood just outside the door, her heart pounding as she watched Levi take his place at the head of the table. He looked unshaken, composed, as if the vote to remove him from his own company was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. But she knew better. She had seen the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers curled ever so slightly against the edge of the table. He was calculating his next move, waiting for the right moment to strike. Jack Monroe sat across from him, leaning back in his chair with an air of victory. His smirk was subtle, but it was there, a silent declaration that this was already over. Betsy clenched her fists. He doesn't know what's coming. Levi exhaled slowly, his piercing gaze sweeping across the room before settling on the chairman. Let's get on with it. The chairman cleared his throat, his voice stiff. Mr. Whitmore, given the allegations brought against you, Levi lifted a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Allegations that have no merit. Jack chuckled under his breath. Says the man under investigation. Levi didn't even glance at him. His focus remained on the board. We all know why we're here. This isn't about ethics or misconduct. This is about Jack Monroe and Elliot Turner attempting to take what they haven't earned. Jack's smirk widened. And yet, here we are voting on your removal. Levi finally turned his gaze to him, his voice dangerously smooth. That's the funny thing about votes, Jack. They only matter if you've counted correctly. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jack's face. Levi leaned forward slightly. Would you like to tell the board about your private dealings with Turner? About the backdoor agreements, the diverted funds? Or should I? The chairman stiffened. What is he talking about? Jack's smirk faltered. He's bluffing. Levi slid a sleek black folder across the table. Go ahead, take a look. A tense silence followed as the chairman opened it, flipping through pages of documentation. His expression darkened with every passing second. Levi rested his chin on his hand. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a full breakdown of Jack Monroe's off-the-books transactions with Turner Innovations. He's been siphoning company assets, planning this takeover long before he ever filed these so-called ethics complaints against me. Jack's face paled. This is ridiculous. Levi smirked. Is it? Because I also took the liberty of inviting someone who might clear things up. The door swung open. Detective Henry Brooks stepped inside, his badge glinting under the boardroom lights. I believe Mr. Whitmore is referring to me. Gasps rippled through the room. Jack shot up from his chair. This is absurd, you can't… Detective Brooks pulled out a stack of official-looking papers. We have a subpoena, Mr. Monroe. Your accounts, your emails, even your little secret meeting with Turner last night. He turned to the chairman. This investigation? It's real, but not against Mr. Whitmore. Jack's breath hitched. Levi exhaled, leaning back. I'd sit down if I were you. Jack's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he collapsed into it, his confidence crumbling before everyone's eyes. The chairman cleared his throat, looking visibly shaken. I think we need to reconsider this vote. Levi gave a slow, satisfied nod. I think so too. The vote was called. One by one, the board members shifted in their seats, their loyalty shifting with the tide. The motion to remove Levi Whitmore was denied. Betsy let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Levi stood, buttoning his jacket as he addressed the room. Jack Monroe will be stepping down effective immediately. I trust I won't need to explain why. Jack didn't fight it. He couldn't. His carefully laid plan had just been shattered in front of everyone. Levi turned, his gaze finding Betsy in the doorway. And then, without a word, he walked toward her, passing Jack without sparing him a second glance. When they stepped into the hall, Betsy finally let the emotions spill over. You knew this would happen. Levi smirked, though there was something softer in his eyes. I told you, Betsy. I don't lose. She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. You don't play fair either. Levi took a step closer, his voice lower. Fair is a matter of perspective. She swallowed, heart pounding. So, it's over? Levi's expression turned serious. Almost. Betsy frowned. What do you mean? Levi hesitated, and for the first time, there was something almost uncertain in his eyes. I have something to tell you. Her stomach twisted. Levi. He exhaled. Jack was right about one thing. Her chest tightened. What? Levi held her gaze. I brought you into this for a reason, but not just to take down Jack. Betsy felt something shift in the air. Then why? Levi's jaw flexed slightly. Then, his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Because I didn't want to do this alone. Her breath caught. Levi reached for her hand. Slow, hesitant. I don't trust easily, Betsy, but I trust you. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't pull away. Levi, he exhaled, his thumb grazing her knuckles. You ask me what happens when I don't need you anymore. Her heart pounded. Levi's voice was barely audible now. The thing is, I do need you, and not just for this. The weight of his words settled between them, heavier than any deal, any power struggle. Betsy inhaled sharply, her throat tight. Are you sure? Levi's lips parted slightly. like he wanted to say something more, but instead, he just gave a small nod. Yes. For the first time, he wasn't the unshakable CEO, the man who always had a plan. He was just Levi, standing in front of her, waiting for her to decide. Betsy let out a shaky laugh, her eyes burning. Then I guess you're stuck with me. Levi's lips curved, just slightly. I can live with that. And in that moment, it wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about Jack Monroe or Whitmore Tech or any of the battles they had fought. It was just them. And for the first time in a long time, Levi Whitmore had something he wasn't willing to lose.